As we've seen in the past couple days, the NHL trade market is really heating up. Many teams are getting ahead of the curve here and making moves early. In today's video, I want to discuss some more updated NHL trade rumors. I want to discuss a little bit further the possibility of Sergei Bobrovsky going to the Florida Panthers. Is that likely to happen now, or could it wait for the offseason? Also, are the Nashville Predators done? Plus, I want to talk about the Montreal Canadiens. They've been scouting the Anaheim Ducks a lot, and it looks like they're really searching hard for a top-pairing left-shot defenseman to play with Shea Weber. We'll get into all the latest coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as we've seen here yet again, we've had some more trades yesterday to discuss. The Nashville Predators were very busy acquiring Brian Boyle and Cody McLeod, certainly adding some depth pieces for their bottom six and adding a little bit of grit and toughness along with that here. Obviously, the Nashville Predators had some news here that Zach Rinaldo was going to be out for the remainder of the season due to a surgery he had to have, and as well they're without Austin Watson for an indefinite period of time as he enters stage 2 of the NHL substance abuse program, which we discussed before as well. So hard to say if Watson returns this season or if his season is over as well. So they've added some insurance pieces who can play a similar type of role. And there's now big questions whether or not the Predators are done. Obviously, they traded a second-round pick for Boyle and a seventh-round pick for McLeod, which really isn't anything too really to worry about, especially a seventh rounder. The second round pick seems reasonably fair for Boyle, but some think it might be a little much, but I guess it's hard to say. The 2019 draft is looking pretty decent. Not sure it's quite as deep as some of the years we've seen, so very well at the end of the day here might not be too bad. But there's a lot of speculation that you still want to add a top six forward. They've been linked to many of the other top guys' names on the market, like Wayne Simmons. We've heard they might have interest in Stone or Duchesne in Ottawa should they become available, as well as Artemi Panarin and all the big names. Really, Nashville's really been linked to many of them as they really search for an answer to add some offensive scoring punch here to fit in their top six. Now, we don't have any more direct links to any particular player, but based on what they acquired before, some think that Wayne Simmons might not be a fit anymore based on the roles that McLeod and Boyle can play for them. I'm not entirely convinced of that. Yes, Simmons can also provide some toughness and some grit, but he's certainly way more offensive than either of those guys. So I do think they would still consider that. A lot of it's going to boil down to price tag, but apparently GM David Poile is certainly not scared to spend right now. He's not afraid to send that first-round pick for 2019, as well as potentially even one of their top prospects like an Eeli Tolvanen or Dante Fabro. Of course, like I mentioned yesterday, I do have long-term concerns over Nashville's prospect pool. They don't have a lot of high-end prospects and difference makers outside of Tolvanen and Fabro, and really I think their pool is getting a little bit depleted because they've been trading a lot of draft picks. Like last year, they only had picks round 4 through 7. They didn't have any picks leading up to the 4th round at all. So I'd hate to see them deplete themselves too much, but their window to win is shorter than most teams, like I mentioned yesterday as well. I do think the Predators are really only going to be a top contending team for 2, maybe 3 seasons before they're going to have difficulty with salary cap and have to disband here a little bit. Plus, to get Pekka Rinne still playing, excellent hockey in the net. It's only a matter of time before that starts to decline here in a few years as his age creeps up. So I do think the Predators are all in. They likely are going to be making another big move. But exactly who that's going to be is really going to boil down to who's available. But Poile is not afraid to spend, and I don't think they're done here by a long stretch. Now, another player who might be staying put that we've talked about a lot as being on the move would be Michael Ferlin of the Carolina Hurricanes. There's now some talk that he very well might be staying with Carolina. Carolina's not that far out of a playoff spot, and as they contend to possibly get in, they're going to need a guy like him to kind of help keep that in order here and possible for them to maybe make the playoffs. Now, of course, Tom Dundon, the owner, not afraid to spend money on the right players, but in some areas does come across as being a little cautious to spend at the same time. Obviously, they recently signed Teravainen to a long-term deal. They now need to look after Sebastian Aho, and there was some thought and feeling that between the Teravainen and Aho contracts, that they just wouldn't have enough left over for Ferlin to kind of meet their own internal budget needs or whatnot. But now there's talk that very well might not be an issue depending on how the numbers fall for the other guys. So they very well, at the very least, might use Ferlin as their own rental, try to get into the playoffs, which I think would be huge for the organization, especially, to get that extra playoff revenue from at least one round of playoffs would be good for the franchise as well. So Ferlin may not be going after all, but if we see the Carolina Hurricanes have a bad couple of weeks here and fall out of contention leading to the deadline, they very well might revert back, and the old rumors might resurface here, teams circling back. But for right now, I think it's quite possible that he very well might end up staying after all. I wanted to revisit as well the possibility of Sergei Bobrovsky going to the Florida Panthers, as we've seen the deal with the Panthers and Penguins here just not that long ago last week. Obviously, the Panthers are freeing up some cap space for free agency and bring in some big names. They're certainly, we're not afraid to go public with that. We saw General Manager Dale Talon indicate that they're really positioning themselves for free agency and trying to improve their team next year. I do think that the team's all about giving up on this season. They're a little bit too far out of contention, and they just see it as a lost cause here. So they're preparing for the future now. Of course, there was also some speculation, and even though they can sign Bobrovsky as a free agent in the summer to kind of get ahead of things like many other teams are doing right now, that they very well might make a trade for him to bring him in. That way the Panthers had first crack at signing him as a free agent instead of competing with a bunch of teams in the summer, that they'd have first dibs here while he's under contract to extend him out for 7 or 8 years. And that very well still might be a possibility, but there are a lot of the belief within the NHL insiders is that likely won't happen. I did see some wild rumors floating around that Columbus Blue Jackets might try to move him to Florida, get back pieces like James Reimer, for example, possibly Derek Brassard, maybe even Mike Hoffman. It looks like the Panthers wouldn't necessarily be opposed to moving him. If he might be the next to go if they want to move out more salary. And then once that trade was complete, to flip either some of those assets over to LA and trade for Jonathan Quick. Personally, I'm not sure that that's going to actually take place here. That very well could happen in the summertime. If Bobrovsky's not back in Columbus, it totally makes sense for the Blue Jackets to take a run at Jonathan Quick. I think he's got enough years left in him that as a short-term replacement here for the next couple of years to kind of help keep them in contention certainly would be a wise move. I can see maybe some big things going down at the draft. I wouldn't be completely shocked here if Bobrovsky is moved. However, as time goes on here and based on what the price tag would be, I do think it is becoming less likely that he does get moved, but I wouldn't completely rule it out. But if Columbus does decide to trade him or Panarin, I do believe they're going to be trying to make other moves here, or make sure they get assets in return that they can remain in contention for the playoffs and then try to get the first playoff round of victory here in the franchise history, which is something they've yet to be able to accomplish. So watch the Blue Jackets closely, but it is quite possible that the price tag might be just too much, and Florida might just take their chances during the UFA period beginning on July the 1st. Now, lastly here, I want to touch on the Montreal Canadiens. They've been kind of quiet in the rumor mill as of late. GM Marc Bergevin has been out scouting a lot lately, though, really keeping a close eye on the Anaheim Ducks. Now, the Ducks are a team that's been in complete free fall lately. I believe they've lost 17 of 19. They had a horrendous streak going for losing games. They won 1 or 2. Now they're back on another massive losing slide here. Randy Carlyle still has his job, which is incredibly surprising. But it is believed that the Ducks are going to make some attempts to at least unload 1 or 2 players, especially as they attempt to sign Jakob Silfverberg to a new contract, which is going to prove difficult because of their cap situation. Many of their other longer-term, bigger contracts are complete with no move clauses or some form of a no trade clause, which really complicates moving them. So you're unlikely to see guys like Perry or Getzlaf or Kessler go anywhere. So obviously they're not going to want to move John Gibson. He's kind of their franchise, really their shining star right now that they can rely on each and every night. Their decor is there obviously an area of strength as well. So if they do make any trades, they're going to probably want to boost up their forward depth and get some scoring punch up front as well. So it's believed that the Habs have interest in defenseman Kant Fowler, who's obviously in the first year, a big 8-year extension. He signed with the Ducks at $6.5 million. It's been believed for some time that the Habs are really interested in bringing in a top pair defenseman to play on the left side with Shea Weber, who's obviously a solid top pair right shot guy. Obviously they signed Carl Alsner with those hopes that he would be that guy, but obviously that has failed miserably. He's been mostly in the minors this year. Obviously they'd like to move that contract as well, and whether or not they acquire a guy like Fowler might be contingent on them moving out other salary. But it is believed, though, that if the Ducks make that deal, they're going to probably want some of the younger pieces that the Habs have that they may not want to move. I'm sure the Ducks are going to be asking for players like Kotkaniemi, like Suzuki, like Ryan Poehling that we saw have an awesome World Junior Tournament for Team USA. So it might come at a big price tag, and I'm not sure that it's a price tag that Bergevin's going to want to pay. But he has been scouting the Ducks quite closely lately. It is believed to have interest. Doesn't mean there's going to be a big deal there. But I do believe the Ducks, between now and the deadline, we will see at least 1, maybe 2 of their bigger name players possibly moved out as they slowly start the acceleration here of going into a retool or a rebuild. I do think this team needs to rebuild. I think a lot of their top players are just a little bit too old and too slow, and they really need to kind of rebrand themselves as a quicker, more skilled team, and that's going to take some time to do. So we'll see how much the Ducks here continue to go into free fall mode and what the price tags change for some of these guys. But keep your eye on the Habs. They are looking for a left shot defenseman. At this point, things are looking pretty solid for them to make the playoffs. So I do see Marc Bergevin making a deal, but he's made it clear he's not in a rental market. If he makes a trade, it's going to be a hockey trade. Somebody who's signed longer term, and Fowler would be an ideal candidate for them to acquire if the asking price can be met and they're willing to pay that price tag. So we'll see what happens here. Montreal Canadiens do have a fair bit of draft picks they could use as well as trade bait. So we'll see what happens. I guess if you're a Habs fan and you can acquire Kant Fowler, which of your young assets would you be willing to part with, combined possibly with some other draft picks to make that acquisition? I think he would be a great fit for them. It's just a matter if the price tag is right or not. So let me know your opinions down below, and we will continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel here, hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up before you go. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.